Hey folks, thanks for tuning in for another Cruise of Smooth. Just heading into work today. Hope y'all been doing okay today. I want to tell you about one of the stranger friends that I've got. I used to live, years ago, real close to the majority of my friends from the time I was like 10 till I turned about 26, 27, I think. That's when I moved. Maybe a little older than that even. Anyway, this one buddy of mine, he lived right up the road from me, about 2-3 miles, and I'd see him at minimum once a week, sometimes 2-3 times a week, just goofing off and doing stuff. And he was older than I was, and I'd help him watch his youngest son when he was too little to be left at home by himself. I'd help him watch his son on Saturdays when he had to work overtime, stuff like that. Well, the short version of the story is in 2015, 16, I forget the exact year, he ended up having to move, and now he lives in about an hour and a half, 2 hour ride away from where I live, and we get to see each other a couple times a year. Normally he comes down to visit. He doesn't have a spot set up to entertain a lot, but he comes down to visit. He's getting right by my house, so I might have to go up there soon and check out his new residence. But he and I talk on the phone at least 3 times a week on average, and there have been times he's called on days off when I'm not busy and he's not busy, and we'll get to yapping and carrying on for an hour. And he was a good buddy of my dad's. This friend of mine, he's almost twice my age, but I've known him for almost 20 years, and him and Dad used to go out to have lunch and everything, and he's got a ton of just interesting stories about his life growing up, about some of the stuff he used to do when he was young. He lived a much wilder life than I did. But he and I just spend a lot of time on the phone talking and catching up, and I still keep in touch with his son a little bit. Talk to him about his son, his grandkids, and everything, and he's just a fantastic friend. And he's one of 2 friends that I've got where distance has been no object. My dad used to call it a bookmark friendship. You don't grow distant, you just put a bookmark in it. Whenever you talk, you pick up right where you left off. Another friend of mine, long story short, her and I met through a mutual friend online. A buddy of mine was an Army brat in high school, and his parents got transferred up to whatever fort it is in Anchorage, Alaska. And so he went up there and met this girl. She in the same school, and they got talking, and they're friends, but they didn't have a lot of common interests. And he's like, you know who you need to talk to? And so she messaged me on Facebook, and it was kind of weird and random at first, but her and I have been friends for 10 years. Through dating relationships, breakups, marriage, kids, everything, we keep in contact. A couple years ago, she came to visit for Christmas, and that was just the biggest surprise my wife ever pulled on me. But long distance friend, you know, some of your weirder friends or some of your better friends. I've known that guy for almost 20 years. I met him when I was 16, 17. I met him about 16 years ago, and I met her about 10 years ago. So it's just weird, the people that can come into your life that buddy of mine that lives 2 hours away, I'll tell you something real interesting. On Friday nights, those of you that have Cracker Barrels in the area and frequent the establishment, Friday night is the fish fry at Cracker Barrel. And something really interesting that we used to do is every Friday night we go out to Cracker Barrel. It would be me, my buddy, his son, and then a mutual friend that was in his 80s at the time, who was a World War II tanker veteran. And we'd go out there and get our fish and coffee and tea and just have a good old time conversating. And it looked like there was 4 generations sitting at a table, but there was only 2 relations. It was just a good time to hang out. I really enjoyed it. That World War II veteran is getting ready to be 96 years old this year, still lives by himself. He gave up driving late last year, early this year, because his family started getting irritated at him for driving himself. He had 1 accident in 15 years, and he said that the cop wrote it up as his fault, but he's like, I bet if I really wanted to, I'd get that taken off. And he still drove for a couple years after that, no problems. He was like 90 when the accident happened, so cop kind of was ageist about it. But you just never know who your friends are going to be, and life is a strange thing. People are strange. It's just weird the courses of action that will bring you to your friends. That buddy of mine across state lines, the way he and I met, I had gotten a source for good, cheap firewood. What it was, there's a stave about 20 miles away from where I used to live that made whiskey barrels. Well, when you make those, you waste a lot of the wood because some of it's got knots in it or imperfections or cracks when it fell, and so not all of it can be used to make the barrels. Well, I met a guy that split the stuff, and since he could pick all that stuff up for free, he could sell it cheap and still make good money on it, because the only expense he had in it was his gas to and from the place to go get it and gas for his wood splitter. Well, I could pick it up, run it into town, and sell it and make money, but everybody was happy because he was paying nothing for his and I was paying cheap for mine, and so I could sell it at a competitive price and make money. Well, the buddy of mine in Indiana, when he lived close to me, he always heated with a wood stove. You can see where the friendship comes in. I had a trailer load of firewood parked out in front of the house with a for sale sign on it. He pulls up, starts talking to me about firewood, gets himself a pickup truck load of firewood, hands me some money, and there starts a beautiful friendship. I cut grass for him for about 10 years, everywhere he lived in town. He moved once or twice. Cut grass for his mother. I very briefly was interested in one of his daughters, who was a nut, and he'll admit that. The phrase that he uses to describe her, and I quote, head like a statue, brain like a rock. But yeah, her and I dated for a brief period of time, and I met the majority of his family that's in the area. He's got some family that's way out in the middle of nowhere, across multiple state lines, but he and I keep in pretty close touch. Life's just funny. That's kind of all I got. He and I just got off the phone, so it was on my mind. I hadn't really thought of much new to talk about. I don't want this to be just politics and in news all the time, that gets depressing. The one thing I will say, I read an article, I'll see if I can find it, post a link in the description. It's not peer-reviewed, but all the sources for the data were cited, and they were reputable sources like the CDC, etc., as well as Centers for Virology and multiple hospitals. This study delved into the numbers of coronavirus. The short take on it is, if you have a certain amount of testing capacity for coronavirus, there's going to be a certain percent, whatever it is, that you miss, due to the fact that either you can't get the test where the hot spots are in time, or you don't have enough tests to test everybody. So where this study got real interesting is the guy studied the amount of asymptomatic cases that were found in the test, where someone just went to go get swabbed and they're feeling fine, but they've got corona. Okay, interesting. He broke down that percentage, broke down the percentage of people that are hospitalized, broke down the estimated percentages of people that are totally asymptomatic and never get tested walking around, broke down percentages of mortality by age, all sorts of stuff. And based on all the data that he could get and all the estimates he could get, some of it is estimates, I will admit, but based on all the data and estimates that he could get from reputable sources, he put the fatality rate of this at 0.27 to 0.3%, I think. So what was really interesting about that to me is we've been hearing, 2 to 3% fatality rate nearly the whole time that this has been going on. And turns out someone that studied it, he may not be reputable, but all of his sources were cited where he got all the numbers and figures and just crunched the numbers. So I just thought it was interesting to have that much good news. Now, to put that into comparison, 0.2 to 0.3% is roughly a bad flu season. Roughly. It's the curve on coronavirus as far as the fatality per age is way different. If you eliminate the 65 and up population from your averages, the fatality rate is a very light flu season. So it obviously does pick on older people worse than the flu does. But I've had this theory for a while that whenever everybody is willing to breathe that sigh of relief that, Corona is kind of over and we're past it, and whatever happens, whether it's herd immunity, vaccinations, combination of the two, whatever, when the cases are trending downward constantly and eventually we hit zero and everybody kind of breathes that sigh of relief and there's a moment to relax and process the data, that once we have all the data sets, and there's going to be a lot of people surprised. I look for it to come out that we shouldn't have done all that we did when it came to closures and hospital limitations, that we wasted a ton of money on things like ventilators and stuff, because even before we knew ventilators were likely hurting people that were in critical care, and everybody that got critical care was going on a vent, there were ventilators not being used. at a train tracks right after this light. I didn't want to go Dukes of Hazzard in my car. So, there were ventilators not being used. Where the ventilators ended up being sent, there were tons of them that just sat unused. And so they're going back into emergency medical stockpiles where they, if they're not maintained, they will degrade and become useless junk. And so that's a lot of money that we wasted on this. I think that the mandated closures of a lot of the in-person stuff, the mandated this, that, and the other, was ridiculous. I think that you could have encouraged everything that we're doing now 4 months ago, and we would have been roughly where we're at right now and maybe in a little bit better shape, and the economy sure would have fared better. The one thing that I would love to know, and I don't know that there will ever be a scientific way to verify this, but I've got a theory. There have been reports, obviously, that suicides, overdoses, and things like that have upticked, or had upticked, during all the 3 months of lockdown where it was really hard everywhere. The thing I would love to know is, if we had done zero things and just, it's going to run wild, whatever happens, happens, use your best judgment, use whatever precautions you want, everything's staying open. And the virus ran rampant with, on average, call it even a 0.4% mortality rate. What would the death rate year to date look like compared to what we did overall? And I'm counting, and like what I mean is, okay, we kept coronavirus death rate low for 4 months, relatively speaking, and then we start to gradually reopen, and we're kind of, you know, doing this number with coronavirus deaths. If we had just let it run its course, would it be any worse than what we've had with all the suicides, overdoses, and people that have died of preventable things but were scared to go to the hospital or miss medical treatment? You know, chemo patients not going for their chemo, heart patients not going for this, that, and the other, dialysis appointments missed, things like that. The people that are going to die of treatable illnesses that couldn't get seen due to the government orders to suspend non-critical medical care, or elective medical care. So that's something that I would love to know is, did we actually save any lives? I don't know the answer to that. I would wager to say that we didn't. That the flatten the curve from COVID didn't flatten the death rate nationally. And I know that there was a lot of death in New York City from COVID. I also know that there's a lot of over-reporting where you have people that were on death's door. They contracted coronavirus a day before they died, and they test positive for it. And they died with COVID, not from COVID, counted as a coronavirus death. There are also a ton of reports where if someone had coronavirus symptoms, which are vast, headaches, diarrhea, fever, running stuffy nose, scratchy throat, cough. If you died with any of those symptoms and they couldn't figure out why you died, like if you died from the flu, if they didn't run a flu test, you were counted as a COVID death. So I'd be willing to wager that we didn't save any lives, and in fact, our response might have cost excess deaths in other ways. Don't know, could be wrong, can't prove it either way. Anyway, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. So enjoy, you friends. You never know where you're going to meet the next one. Stay safe. Thanks for tuning in for another Cruise with Smooth Gang. I'm getting ready to pull in at work, so I'm out of here.